Hi, this is Gracie with Beautiful Life Self Care, and I want to talk to you today about how to weather a transition. And it's come to my mind recently just because here in Washington, D.C., we've gotten a dip in the weather. So we've gone from sort of a moderate winter to a really cold, windy winter. And just by observing what's been arising in my own body and mind and emotions, it's really emphasized to me why it is that we need to really think about this before the transition actually comes. And transitions, they happen in all sorts of ways. So weather is a really basic example, a very natural example. The seasons are always going to change no matter what climate you live in. There's a change to the cycles, but it could also be a change in your living situation. Maybe you've moved. There could be a change in your job. It could be a change in relationships. Maybe you're starting a new relationship. Maybe you're ending a relationship. And it's in these transitions that we have to be really careful, because a lot of space opens up for us. And it's something I've talked about before, that the feeling of space, it can be really scary to a lot of us, especially in American culture where we're just used to filling things up. Space can be a particularly bizarre or strange concept to us. And I really think it comes back to like commercialism, that we're like never supposed to be contemplative. We're just supposed to, be doing the next thing and buying the next thing and scheduling the next thing. And it's a much more Eastern idea of just taking a step back and not, not even like in your living space, not even having so much clutter, taking some stuff away so you can have some empty space. So you can really start to think and contemplate and be aware of things. So I think transitions in that way, they can be really valuable because we're getting out of our normal routine. We're resetting ourselves. And within that, there's an amazing capacity for growth, that we have the potential to really move into a new level of our own evolution and being. And I believe that this is really the secret to staying happy and staying connected and staying vital in your life, is to always be growing in some way, to always be ushering in the next stage of your evolution. And again, it's one of the most natural things that you can imagine, that from the beginning of time, what has life done? It's evolved and moved into more complicated forms and up the stakes and up the ante. And I love that. And it helps to give me a lot of understanding sometimes of why I like to meet challenge, because challenge means that there's another level, that I'm not done with my growth yet. And that really, I believe that none of us are done with our growth yet, that all of us as human beings, no one's done until we breathe our last breath here. So transition, yes, good thing in many ways, but also space opening and transition, where we're not sure quite what's going to happen next. Scary thing in many ways. And especially, I feel this in this weather transition right now, that we're moving into the depth of winter. This is the depth of nothing. There's no leaves on the trees. There's like a stillness in the morning. This nature has drawn all of its energy inward, and it's forcing us to do the same thing, as countercultural as it may be. So the problem with feeling this and not living in a culture that understands and values this is that we can be drawn into making decisions that are not going to help us to really evolve to the next level. They're either going to make us stay stuck, or even I don't really believe in taking steps backwards, because I think the whole process of things, every step backwards helps us to move forward eventually. But I think it can make the process harder than it actually needs to be when we're not paying attention and we're not aware of what we're going through. So I've known for myself that in transitional times, especially when leaving one relationship during these periods of like breakups or periods of loss, of losing somebody close to me, that it can be really easy to allow in some habits that don't serve me. And that can be, sometimes it shows up in the form of a person, somebody who is fun to hang out with. Sometimes really charismatic people have come into my life around this time, but the way that we engage in behavior with each other can be that person that wants to go out and have a drink, and then before you know it, you're like 3 drinks in, and you're kind of having a great time, but there's that little voice in your head that's telling you like, oh, I should really go home and go to bed and be taking care of myself. This isn't really self-care right now. This is more distraction. Or it can be in the form of just getting really into a new television series and some shows on Netflix. It can be just all of a sudden never having groceries in the house and having to go out to eat for all of our meals and not making great food choices while we're there, which leads to like a heavy feeling in the body, which leads to less clarity of like, where we are in this transitional time. And in Ayurveda, there's a concept, it's called ojas. And what ojas means is it means the fluid of life. And it's I think like babies are the best example of this. It's like it's something or somebody with like a glow to them, just like healthy glowing skin and like a really just grounded state of being, of somebody that you could go to and you're just like, you feel like relaxed in their presence because they're stable, and you feel inspired by them because there's like a light emanating. And we all know people like this in our life, and it's good because we can be inspired by each other sometimes when we're going through a harder time. But the problem comes in is that when we forget that we actually get to create this ojas for ourselves. And the way that you create ojas is through routine. It's very unsexy, actually, how you create ojas. It's like going to bed early, giving yourself that hour before bed where you're putting away your computer, you're doing your yoga or lighting a nice candle, taking some time to read a book that's inspiring to you before you go to bed. But you're really shutting down, and you're not drawing outwards. So we can think again about the nature, what it's doing right now. Nature in this deep winter state is it's drawing inward, and it's resting, and it's developing ojas. So when the spring comes and when the time for action is actually appropriate, that has the energy, it has the clarity to produce like beautiful flowers and a great abundance of crops and all the things that are really sustaining to life. And because so many of us, I think we get scared of this drawing inward period of what we really need to do is just conserve our resources and eat food that's easy to digest, not stay away from like the crazy appetizers, happy hours, and anything else that you eat it and you don't feel good afterwards. But instead focusing on the soups and the sweet potatoes and the foods that like nature produces around this time too, of just the root vegetables, what grounds us. That's going to help us to cultivate more ojas. Also practices like meditation and yoga, anything where you're slowing down, drawing attention inward. For me, I develop an amazing amount of ojas when I go out into nature, especially if I can just get away from like the rush of traffic and noises. In DC, we have the Arboretum, which is just a really beautiful, very unpopulated, not many people go visit it, spot where you can just feel like a little bit of like, this is what nature feels like. This is what it, a fairly intact piece of land feels like. And there's just something in me that I start to feel so connected and so connected to myself and so connected to the greater scheme of things, which, putting things in perspective of being able to look at evolution as a whole, then we're able to, see ourselves in it, that there's a humility that's there, that like, oh, we're not separate from this, that nature goes through a rebuilding period every single year with winter. And so why should we not go through the same rebuilding periods in our life? Especially when we just know, when we're not stuck in our fear, but when we really know our truth, that like good things are coming, life goes on. Especially now that I'm, in my 30s, I love that because I've just had enough life experience that I know that like no matter how horrible or defeating like a loss is in the moment, that I know that there's healing, and I trust the healing process, and just that trust alone, I think, really develops good ojas and good reserves for us. And another way that ojas is really manifested is it's considered to be our immune system, and in Ayurveda, and that feels true to me, that like when I'm especially going through like a little bit of a transition period, that if I'm not actively taking care of myself and trying to cultivate like a steadiness and a drawing inward and a relaxing into the greater whole, that I tend to get sick. And I see it right now with a lot of my students who are just, the weather's changing. It's after the holidays where we've, gone through a prolonged period where we haven't taken good care of ourselves and our bodies. And now our OJS is depleted, and we're in a time where we really need that extra strength and drawing inward, and people don't have it. So that's when the viruses get in and people get sick. And especially if you're getting sick like multiple times in one season, it would just be something to start to look at of like, well, are you taking this time? Are you following the wisdom of nature right now to transition well? And if you're not, then don't start to beat yourself up about it, because that's not going to help anything. And it's knowledge, and that's all it is. Is that what I love about Ayurveda is that it gives us words for experiences that we already kind of know because we're living them out in our lives, but it helps us to look at them in a much more impersonal way. That like, okay, that this isn't just like me not taking good care of myself. This is like a matter of like what being asked to look at my deeper reserves. And because we're so busy, and many of us are professionals and we have families, and it's really hard for us to, remember that we need to do this because everybody's asking so much of us. And if that's the case for you, then think about like where in your day can you insert just like a half an hour of your own self-care? And like where can you insert like meditation or just some deep breathing or reading a book that you love? Or going to be out in nature. So I hope that this sparks something in you, and as we transition from fall to winter and winter to deep winter and then out into spring, just anytime that you feel like your energy is getting down, that you can just do these practices, follow the example of nature, eat some food that feels really nourishing to you, and just trust in the process of transition, that this is just on the other side of this, especially if you can just be conscious of it, it's going to put you in a more solid place. And I notice it a lot in yoga classes, that I teach a vinyasa flow yoga class, and we use the vinyasa to transition between postures and sides of the body. And the vinyasa is that lowering down, exhaling chaturanga strength, and then inhaling, opening up, full chest back bend, and then exhaling, returning back to just that humbled downward facing dog with the head dropped. And there's such a ritual and a process in that. And I look around the room and I see how many people are really rushing through it, because I think it's uncomfortable. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of openness. And I know myself that sometimes I just want to rush through it. And so maybe just in your yoga practice this week, you can really concentrate too on just those transitions. Like, how do you slow down? How do you practice strength, openness, humility, like all of these aspects of strong ojas, and how can you support that with your lifestyle too? So I hope that's been helpful for you. If you are going through any kind of like sickness right now, just drink water, give yourself permission to rest, cancel things, just tell people that you just need to rest, and start that self-care revolution in your family or your community. And just remember, if we take really good care of ourselves, then we feel just the abundance of our own good energy. And if we feel that abundance of our own good energy, then we have the capacity to be truly generous with our families, with the people that we love, with our workplaces, and keep living into those higher and higher states of growth and well-being. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll look forward to connecting with you soon. Namaste.